Good evening. In this broadcast, the information program Time. In the beginning of the edition, briefly about the main news of the day. In Strasbourg, today, the question of accepting Russia into the European Council is being decided. In Grozny, federal forces continue to be in combat with Dudaev gunmen who, according to information being received, are losing control over the situation. Vladimir Shumeyka intends to run for the president of Russia. The launch of the American spaceship has been postponed by 1 day. The Russian Union of Coal Workers on the 8th of February intends to hold a 24-hour warning strike. The miners are demanding that they immediately be returned by the government of their debt to the sector for last year in January of this year. That is around 1,300 billion rubles. And also to provide state support for companies within the coal sector in the year 1995 at a level no less than 10 trillion rubles. If this action yields no positive results, as of the 1st of March, the union will begin a pan-Russian strike until the demands of the miners are completely met. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of miners employed in the ore separating factories in the mine shaft boring operations in the association Rostov Coal already are in their second day of walkout. Yesterday, during the first shift, all 26 shafts of the joint stock company Rostov Coal stopped operating, joined by the concentrating factory, machine-producing plants of the construction industry, and the auto bases owned by that same joint stock company. Overall, 76,400 people are on strike. Why today does the leadership address the miners and say, think of the people in the district? Why don't you think about the people in the district? Give people their earned wages and tomorrow they'll give you coal. The district administration offered you some financial aid. Money was offered from the district budget, and we categorically refused that money because that money is designated for doctors and teachers, and we don't need that money. We didn't agree. We need money from the federal budget, which we're entitled to. The coal workers are demanding the visit to the region of a government commission headed by the Vice Premier Anatoly Chubaiets. The condition at 1,500 hours of the pre-strike condition announced by the leaders of the miners' unions at the Vorkuta mines continues. And if the miners themselves are satisfied with the participation in this action as a show of solidarity, then the miners of other mines see the action as a halfway measure and are pushing for a full, more lengthy strike. Union leaders are concerned that a lengthy strike could go out of control and become unmanageable. In any case, the final decision on the protest action in Vorkuta is left up to the leaders of both professional unions, who must reach their final decision at least by tomorrow at their joint meeting. The situation concerning the demands of the miners in an exclusive interview to our correspondent Natalia Chernyshova was commented on today by the Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin and his First Deputy Anatoly Chubaiets. I feel that we will resolve this problem. It's not a simple problem, far from simple. But again, politics is not involved. We simply must resolve and remove the problem, given today's potentials. Salary, yes, well, it is salary, and my position is that salary must be paid. If they work, we have to pay them. Of course, again, I unequivocally state that this not only affects the miners, but everyone. This is our main issue. Anatoly Borisovich, what is your attitude to the economic strike and the threat of a political strike of the coal workers? I think here there are real reasons which truly prompt them into these severe actions, and there is a political game played around it. Therefore, I and my colleagues feel that the situation must be clarified in detail and separate one from the other. Separate the problem connected with truly unfulfilled obligations of the government on salary, and not only on salary. There are the problems in the pension fund and deposits into the fund for medical insurance. Incidentally, I spoke this morning with the head of the administration of Rostov district, Mr. Chubov. Some of the questions were already resolved. What we could resolve on a regional level, we did. And there are some federal questions. And today I'll have a large meeting with coal worker unions where we will define the issues. And if necessary, I will travel to that location so that there I can speak with all of those connected with the problem. The general position is that where there is a debt on the part of the government, an objective issue, we will resolve it. Where there is a political game or moral plural for attempts at political threats. We will leave right away and such a conversation won't materialize. Do you think Mr. Chubais will visit Mr. Chubov after all? Yes, I think so. The aide of the President of Russia, Alexander Lifshitz, on his part feels that the threat of the miners' strike is directly connected with the tempos of adopting the budget for 1995. He stated this at a press conference in Moscow today. According to him, the problem of the miners' strikes can be resolved only after implementing a law on financing the first quarter of the year. Alexander Lifshitz hopes that the President has already signed that law, and this will substantially and immediately change the situation. Apart from that, according to Alexander Lifshitz, the President will deliver an address to the Federal Assembly no later than the 20th of February. The press service of the government of Russia, citing data of the Ministry of Defense, stated today that the situation in the Chechen Republic remains tense in nature. Unlawful militarized groups were concentrating their basic efforts on keeping their hold on southeastern areas of Grozny. There were constant attempts to blockade Russian forces in the regions that they have occupied and to squeeze them out into new areas. Because of the heavy casualties among the Dadaev gunmen at the prime confrontation sites, people without combat experience are being drawn into battle, it says in the statement of the press service. Our correspondent Grigory Brinza just reported from Grozny. For now, it's early to say that the capital of Chechnya will be taken finally in the near future. Moving toward the city are convoys of Russian combat technology. At night, the regions controlled by Johar Dudaev supporters are fired at from heavy artillery and rapid firing installations. During the day, storming aviation joins them. The remaining peaceful population in the city, and according to the military estimates, not more than 40,000 people, gather near the canning factory where the headquarters of the military operation is situated and the government of national rebirth. However, there is no absolute safety even here. At times, it happens that snipers' bullets fly into this area. The northern part of the city is practically under the control of the Ministry of Defense forces. You see that residents are walking about the city, and at night, if you risk going out through the city, you'll see lights burning in the windows. The city is coming back to life gradually. Here to the canning factory, convoys of the Ministry of Emergency Situations deliver humanitarian aid, inventorization and distribution of which is under the strictest control of the employees of the Territorial Department of the Ministry of Emergency Situations of Russia and Chechnya. There are no cases of theft or rerouting humanitarian aid for other purposes. Today in Grozny, it's not so much the Dudaev gunmen who are so dangerous for us, but as the entire closely knit groups of looters. They are international groups, and as all thieves, they don't depend, or typically are not all Chechens, Russians, or Ingushetians. The main thing is that people have a desire to work and to start to live normally. I think in the near future we will manage to resettle people into homes and the spark of life will be kindled. The Ministry of Routes and Communications of Russia is prepared to immediately begin restoration of transit railway communications through the territory of Chechnya to Dagestan and other Transcaucasus republics. Traveling immediately behind railway forces on the Chechen stretch of the Northern Caucasus track were the teams of the Ministry of Routes and Communications of Russia, strictly civilian people. In general, alongside the railway, the industry of the Republic is beginning to be revived. What are you delivering to this area? As of today, more than 200 tons of cargo of food, that is flour, grain, sugar, canned goods, etc. There is a large quantity of various construction equipment, vehicles, cranes, bulldozers, water purification systems, trucks for the delivery of water, heating, oil aggregates, and more than 300 brands of various technology to be used for the restoration of the industry and the economy of the Republic. The session of the regular 12th government staff on the economy of Chechnya, Alexis Kovets, began with summarizing results. The government has prepared and ratified a plan to restore the social and economic life of the Republic. They've adopted 50 resolutions. All the ministries involved in the restorational work dispatched their representatives to the area. And from the federal budget, 500 billion rubles was allotted and 300 billion in the form of state government investments. They've repaired 250 kilometers kilometers of railway track. Homes are being constructed for the elderly and handicapped. Ministry of Healthcare, from its own budget, has sent 30 billion rubles for the construction of a hospital, medical preparations and apparatus. A mechanism was also set up to deliver humanitarian aid. Alexis Kovets emphasized that the authorities are attempting to involve the local population in all these activities. Today in Moscow, it was officially stated that currently engaged on the territory of Chechnya are 15,500 troops of the United Group of the Federal Forces. At the same time, the National Guard of Dudaev at first had numbered around 10,000, and at the beginning of combat, the number of gunmen grew to 15,000. Apart from that, 30 to 40,000 people of the population were recruited into the armed insurrection. These figures, quoted by the Colonel General Anatoly Kulikov, are reported today by Tartas, and if it is so, then it's understandable why the war is being protracted. Because for a successful aggressive operation in contemporary conditions, at least a minimum of a 10-time advantage is needed in live forces and technology. Today at the press conference, the commander of the Internal Forces of Russia, the head of the United Command of the Group of Forces in Chechnya, Anatoly Kulikov, stated that after the 20th of January in Chechen events, qualitative changes occurred, a breakthrough is evident. Its essence is that the army, in fact, has fulfilled its basic mission. It has destroyed the basic group of the armed forces of Dudaev and put the heavy technology out of commission, destroyed its system of operation. Anatoly Kulikov presumed that in 2 or 3 weeks federal forces will be in complete control of Grozny. This will greatly affect the entire situation because today many Chechens are in a waiting mode. The old people come themselves and say, believe us, as soon as you resolve the problem with Grozny, we will come personally and lay down our weapons on your table. And the same situation exists in Gudermes. Everything will depend on how successfully the formation of the structures of power will go in Grozny and how effective it will be in Grozny. Kulikov stated that the federal forces currently are preparing for the fact that gunmen sooner or later will flee to the mountains, but in their opinion, Dudaev will not be able to incite massive partisan war because the population doesn't want it, although terrorist acts and onslaughts will continue for a very long time. Today, the commander of the aviation of the land forces of Russia, Vitaly Pavlov, also met with the press. We did not only not use aviation bombs, but didn't even suspend them in their positions once. This was what the Colonel General Vitaly Pavlov said, speaking about the actions of his subordinates in Chechnya. Within the axis of the aviation of the land forces of Russia, there are only helicopters, around 2,000 of them. There are no airplanes at all. Currently, in Chechnya, there are 48 combat vehicles. During the period of the combat, land aviation has lost 4 helicopters and 9 officers died. For us, of greatest significance and of greatest danger is the fact that we're working basically in conditions of low altitudes, and they are the anti-aircraft guns used by Dudaev formations. Constant fogs extremely complicate the life of helicopter pilots, but despite the difficult meteorological conditions, Vitaly Pavlov said, the helicopters do fly, transport paratroopers, evacuate the injured, and annihilate firing points of the Dudaev supporters. Of course, the Dudaev formations have no effective or reasonable method of action. The former Vice President of Russia, Alexander Rudskoy, was heard today by a commission of the State Duma investigating the reasons and circumstances which led to the crisis in the Chechen Republic. After the meeting, he said to the agency post factum that already documents were publicized with Shaposhnikov's signature where he allowed the sale to Dudaev at residual cost of weapons and property of the Trans-Baikal military district, whose troops were withdrawn from Mongolia. At the same time, the sources in the commission stated that the Commission does not have documents that were mentioned by Rudskoy. Questions connected with regularizing the Chechen conflict were discussed today in the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The results of the meeting, which involved the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Andrei Kozyrov, the Ambassador of the Kingdom Morocco, Seminet, and the Chairman of the spiritual body of the Muslims of Central European Russia, Mufti Gaynudinov, a proposal surfaced to immediately declare a truce in the conflict on the occasion of the Muslim holy month month Ramadan. This proposal, expressed by the Mufti Gaimuddinov, found support in the Islamic world, which was confirmed by the Moroccan ambassador, the representative of a country which is the chairman of the Organization of the Islamic Conference. In the Islamic world, he assured Andrei Kozyrev they're interested in developing multilateral partnership relations with a unified, stable Russia. Hence, we are sure that its leadership will find a wise resolution to the Chechen problem, not, of course, rejecting the advice of prominent religious leaders. We feel, of course, that it would be feasible to declare a moratorium, at least during the holy month Ramadan, on all combat operations, in order to find an opportunity to sit at the dialogue tables. I'm not saying specifically with supporters of Dudayev. There are influential individuals on the territory of Chechnya. One could meet with the Elders' Council or with the clergy, or we could choose trusted or proxy representatives from every village or town and hold dialogues with them. Although the political conflict in Chechnya is an internal problem of Russia, means which the Central Power resorted to for its resolution violate international obligations undertaken by Moscow. This is the interpretation of the situation around Chechnya in the draft resolution submitted for examination today at the session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the European Council. The special meeting dedicated to the examination of the situation in Chechnya and the candidacy of Russia in entering the European Council is underway at the session of the Parliamentary Assembly of that organization in Strasbourg, France. In the capacity of special guests, the status provided to Russia are delegations of both chambers of the Russian Parliament. They were given an opportunity to speak at the session in discussions dealing with the issue prior to its delegates adopting a resolution on it. In its draft, which was initially discussed in commissions, corrections were already made and formulations changed, which lent to the document a more balanced, constructive nature. Together with the sober approach of the members of the Commission, a respected role was played here by Russian parliamentarians. Some of their corrections were embodied in the resolution. Specifically, the procedure of Russia's entry in view of the Chechen events is suspended and not frozen, as initially was worded. The right to resume at any moment the examination of Russia's demand as soon as the military process stops and Chechnya dialogue process begins goes to the Assembly of the European Council and not to its session. Although discussion still continues, but members of the delegation of European parliaments are of the mood to support democratic transformations in Russia and do not reject the Russian demand. And even there is a paradox of opinion that if the Russian notice had been examined last year for membership, in this case, possibly this sad Chechen crisis would not have occurred. The corrections submitted by several foreign parliamentarians were declined to carry the Chechen conflict from the political sphere between the Dudayev regime and the federal power into an ethnic context, in a striving to harshen the European Council's position vis-à-vis Russia. During these moments, while the Euronews program is being broadcast, the Strasbourg session has not yet finished. Boris Yeltsin will officially visit Belarus on the 21st and 22nd of February. This was announced today by the Belarusian President, Alexander Lukashenko. He said during the visit they plan to sign a political agreement on neighborliness and cooperation between Russia and Belarus and several other documents. According to ecologists' estimations, 12 areas of Russia are ecologically unsound zones. Today at the meeting of the government, one of them was declared an area in a state of emergency. Nizhny Tagil, a town of metallurgical and ore mining industry. That is 80% of it. The rest is chemical. The quality of drinking water here is hazardous for the health, and the pollution of the air 50 times exceeds the limits of permissible norms. A specific program was developed to heal the environment of Nizhny Tagil, calculated up to the year 2000, and will cost 5 trillion rubles. It focuses mostly on reducing the technogenous load through restricting plants' capabilities. The paramount problem for the town of drinking water will be resolved through constructing a water bridge station, and they plan also to resettle families from the most polluted areas, and a complex of purification undertakings. The program was adopted unanimously, and as was noted, this is only the first payment on the debt. And there was also a first question, which was examined behind closed doors. As was stated at the briefing, problems of the gold mining industry and the gold assets of Russia were discussed. And from the cryptic statements of the bureaucrats, one could infer that the gold reserve is more or less 200 tons. There is the same proportion to the gross national product in the United States. Also, the performance of the committee was seen as unsatisfactory, and evidently its head will be dismissed from his post. The chairman of the Federative Council, Vladimir Shumeyka, confirmed today in Kaliningrad that he intends to run for the post of the president of Russia planned in 1996. This, a correspondent of Vytautas reported. Vladimir Shumeyka, however, also added that he personally would not gather the 2 million necessary signatures. Details in the report of our correspondent. He's called here the deputy from the Baltic because here it was that he ran and was elected deputy. He came to give an update to his voters, and to my question, is this visit simultaneously the beginning of a new election campaign, he responded that for now a new campaign has no law adopted. The exclusion is the law on the presidential elections, and here, so as to simply become a presidential candidate, one must gather 2 million signatures. I'm interested of those today who have announced that they will run, how many will they gather? And that's 2 million only to become a candidate. There can be no discussion of campaigns. You don't intend to gather signatures? My attitude is that I won't do it myself. It's impossible and inappropriate for me. I'm a government person. But if such signatures are collected, I'll be interested in finding out. Shumeyka visited the Kaliningrad fishing plant, which is at a standstill because of lack of funds to buy raw materials and make dumplings, and met with the editing staff of the district newspapers, the deputies of the local representative organs. Vladimir Shumeyka refuted rumors of the existence of compromising documents in the possession of Dmitry Yakubovsky, the attorney arrested the 20th of December, Interfax reports. If I had taken even 1 ruble in 1993, I wouldn't have passed the prosecutor's exams and wouldn't be here today, Shumeyka said today in Kaliningrad. The meeting of the ministers of finances of the Group of 7, scheduled for the end of this week in Toronto, will probably be held without the participation of the Russian representative. This was learned by the correspondent of the Agency Financial Information from circles close to the Russian government. In the State Duma, the first session of the Council on Social Investments was held, intended to control socially significant state projects. For example, the construction of inexpensive housing, producing medications and infant food, aid to military servicemen withdrawn from European countries. The Council is comprised of 10 deputies, 8 ministers, representatives of various investment funds, indicate the possibility of cooperation between the government and legislators in such a sensitive area as the social sphere. Until late, it looked more like a political battle arena. The chairman of the Committee of the Social Policy of the State Duma, Sergei Kalashnikov, doesn't feel that the varying views of the government and several deputies will impede constructive work. The social sphere has never yet been a source of serious confrontation between the government, Duma, and the president. Unfortunately, so many structures feel that the social sphere is to be secondary, that they even don't feel it's important to have serious conflict here. As Interfax learned from informed sources of law enforcement organs, during the day today in the suburban Moscow, a body of a man was found who appeared to resemble the deputy of the Duma, Sergei Skorochkin. The body was found near the village Sarybia, which is between the towns Zaraysk and Lukhavitsa, to the south of Moscow. Last night, Skorochkin was abducted by 4 unidentified persons from the town Zaraysk in the Moscow district. And literally just before the beginning of our program, the Center of Public Communications of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia confirmed that the victim is truly the deputy Sergei Skorochkin. According to preliminary information, the cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds. Today in Chisinau, a series of Russian and Moldavian documents were signed specifying the order for the withdrawal from Moldova of the 14th Russian Army. As Interfax was told by a highly placed official in the 14th Army, the overall weight of the ammunition in the army warehouses being kept at Pridnestrovia is 410,000 tons. 50,000 tons of the ammunition for technical reasons will not be transported. According to the army source, currently they are being shot off in one of the local training polygons. For the shipment of the rest of the ammunition, according to the leadership of the army, 45 months will be needed. Today in Moscow, talks were held between Viktor Chernomyrdin and the Prime Minister of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Haris Seladic. Viktor Chernomyrdin arrived at the talks after the session of the Presidium of the Government of Russia, and Haris Salajic flew to Moscow from the United States, where the Bosnian premier, in a rather severe form, was refused in the lifting of the embargo on weapons to Muslims. Viktor Chernomyrdin set the tone of the conversation. He stated that Russia was and will continue to be for resolving the Bosnian conflict only through peaceful means on the basis of the plan of the International Contact Group. The Russian Prime Minister confirmed the readiness to establish with Bosnia-Herzegovina official relations on the level of diplomatic representations. In the economic sphere, Russia counts on broadening the two-sided cooperation and specifically intends to increase the deliveries of natural gas to the Balkan country. The visit of Haris Salajic to our country is within the framework of a search for ways to resolve the Bosnian crisis. On Friday, he will speak with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andrei Kozyrev. The first UN trucks for the first time in the last 2.5 months had an opportunity to arrive in Sarajevo with humanitarian cargo for residents of the city. Bosnian Serbs have fulfilled their obligations and deblockaded 2 so-called blue corridors for the delivery of humanitarian aid into the capital of Bosnia-Herzegovina. Dialogues continue also on the opening of blue corridors for passenger traffic. The launch of the American spaceship Discovery from the spacepad in Florida did not occur today. Now it's planned for tomorrow at 8:22 Moscow time. Our personal correspondent in the United States reports details. The crew of the Discovery, 5 Americans and Vladimir Titov, did not even enter the cabin today. At the spacepad, they feared unfavorable weather, but a technical malfunction occurred. In the pre-launch test, one of the inertial transmitters failed, which reports to the ship's computer velocity and altitude. That's what tests are for. Meanwhile, the director of the American Space Agency, Daniel Golding, refuted reports of the newspaper Washington Post that the Russians ostensibly are demanding insurance from the Americans in the event that the Discovery damages the station Mir. In the interview to Ostankino, Golding said that neither side has nor will have any claims against each other. After the flight in 1975, Apollo-Soyuz, the Americans never conducted linkages in space, so there is a basis for doubt after all. And this is how the head of NASA demonstrates the shuttle to dock on the station Mir in June. The danger that the engine brakes in the frontal part of the shuttle will damage its solar batteries exists. And that's why today's rehearsal flight is needed, and that is why the experience of Vladimir Titov is so valuable. An approach within 10 meters and control measurements. There is no linking hub on the Discovery. Made in Russia, it will be installed on the ship Atlantis in June. Here, everyone's already talking about the future, the International Space Station called Alpha, but we learned that this name is unofficial. It must still be approved by the highest leadership of the United States in the White House. But for now, again, a countdown. Tomorrow, one more step toward Alpha. The president of Peru, Alberto Fujimori, in an address to the nation, said that the ceasefire on the Peru-Ecuadorian border should be accompanied with the demilitarization of the zone of the border conflict. However, already violating yesterday's ceasefire agreement at the talks at Rio de Janeiro, the contingents of the Peruvian army launched a massive aggression on the Ecuadorian positions. In Cairo today, the four-sided meeting of the heads of Egypt, Israel, Jordan, and the PLO convened. In the agenda of this unprecedented summit, there's a complex situation which has developed within the framework of the peace process in the Middle East. It's interesting that the first round of high-level meetings occurred in a forum unusual for international forums, a joint dinner, breaking the fast in accordance with the tradition of the Muslim fast kept during the Ramadan month in daylight hours of the day. In Japan, the Marco Polo magazine was closed down, which published the scandalous article on the genocide of the Jewish people during the Second World War. A certain Masanori Nishiyoko stated that there was no genocide at all, and therefore the gas chambers in the concentration camps were found only on territories liberated by the Soviet army, and moreover these gas chambers were especially created by Soviet and Polish authorities, and the 6 million Jews tortured by Nazis was a fabrication. This article evoked a barrage of outrage not only in Japan but in the world, which led to the closure of the edition, which defamed the memory of innocently killed people. Flooding, which has affected the countries of Western Europe, is compared there in a scale to a national tragedy. The reports of flooding in Europe today are similar to combat reports. Foreign agencies put this information from the region in the first place, and news programs begin by showing such films. Cozy, toy-like European towns are now looking like small small Venices. The situation in France and Germany, especially in the Netherlands, remains critical, and not only because the rhythm of lifestyle has been disturbed, which order-loving Europeans value so much. Many of them are forced to leave their homes, forget their personal cars, and to get to public transportation where it still exists, one must use rubber rafts. Incidentally, the governments of the affected countries promised urgent financial aid to victims of the flood. Of greatest concern now are the Dutch dams. The level of increase in water grows menacingly, and despite all measures undertaken, these systems may not withstand the pressure of water. And again, there could be a repeat of the 1953 tragedy. Then the dikes were broken, protecting the province Zeeland from the sea, and 1,835 people died. As of today, the flood already has taken away in the affluent, and it seems most safe Western Europe, more than 20 human lives. Specialists feel that the current situation gives way to very pessimistic predictions. Why is everything occurring in such a tragic manner? Because the serious flooding in Europe is commonplace. Just back in 1993, the rivers also overflowed their banks, and the same countries were affected. Overcoming the repercussions of the flood, Europeans nonetheless probably thought too lightly that lightning would not hit twice or even 3 times in the same place, and Western Europe again was not ready for such a powerful disaster. In Moscow, in the Central House of Journalists on Suvorovsky Boulevard, an exhibit of young Russian artists has opened. Apart from age, they are also united by striving to force us to experience the world as a wonderful creation. I remember when the pianist Vladimir Horowitz was no more. The news flew around the world. The last of the romantics of the 20th century is gone. We pitied the century which was left without romantics. The catalogue of exhibits in Moscow in the House of the Press presents the participants as neo-expressionists. The artists specify, we all are still romantics. Something in us is not worn away by time. We live with faith, hope, and of course love. If romanticism is grandeur of the spirit, then it's present in any bit of the works of Oleg Blинov, Vladimir Upalov, Nikolai Firsov, Vladimir Zhulov. The symbolic name of the group, Youthful, is no coincidence. The works of unbelievable purity with boundless poetry of light, the artists planned, prior to Perestroika, to resist the official stipulations and objectives. The objective of the members of the group is simple, to tear away from the banality, but banal, and create the magnificent. Because everyone sees surrounding life in his own way, according to his own soul. If it's filled with such colors, then even the most severe sentence for the earth to be left without its romantics is deferred for at least a little while longer. In half a minute, Ilya Kukin awaits you with the sports news. With this, I bid you farewell. All the best. Good evening. In Moscow, the tournament of the Commonwealth Championships today had semi-final matches. The Dynamos of Tbilisi very much wanted for the first time to be in the finals of that tournament. Their match with the Donetsky Miner, they then played very offensively and had plenty of opportunities to score, but the Georgian team managed this only once the Dynamos realized the 11-meter, and this occurred only 4 minutes before the end of the match. The goal was scored by Kenkladze. A little bit more than half an hour ago, the second semi-final ended, in which the Moscow Spartak confidently defeated the Riga Skonta 3-0. Goals were scored by Ilya Tsimbalari, Yuri Nikiforov, and Nikolai Pisarev. And so Saturday, the final, Spartak Dynamo Tbilisi. And late last night at the London Highbury Park Stadium, the battle in the European Super Tournament began with Arsenal and Milan. The majority of fans note that the match was extremely boring, and no surprising, because the tie is 0-0. The persistent London offence brought no results, and Milan played their defence too openly, evidently relying on the response match at home on the 8th of February. The Russian floor hockey team, confidently beating in the group tournament the world champions, the Swedes, 6-2, has entered the quarterfinals, where it will meet with the winner of the pair, Kazakhstan-Norway. At the International Hockey League tournament today, there was one match, the Dynamo Itil, 4-2. And now from the NHL, the Pittsburgh Penguins yesterday had their 6th straight victory, now over the New York Rangers, 4-3. This is the best start of the Penguins in the season since 1985-86. Of the Russians in in the league, scoring 1 goal each were Sergei Fedorov, Pavel Bure, Herman Titov, and Alexei Yashin. The National Basketball Association set a new record yesterday. He teams the Utah Jazz, the champion of the Barcelonian Olympics. John Stockton was the first in the history of the association in successful passes. He beat such legendary players like Oscar Robertson and Magic Johnson. And finally, our announcement today at 21:30 on Channel 1 Ostankiно, big basketball, the European Cup, the Army team, Real Madrid. I hope you didn't forget that playing on the Spanish team is the best basketball player of Europe of 1994, Artebas Sabonis, but the Army needs only to win. And about the weather, hello. Tomorrow on the Kola Peninsula in the Arkhangelsk district, in the Nenets Autonomous District, and in the Republic of Komi, it will be cloudy and windy weather with snow and blizzard. The reason for that is a broad cyclone with a center over Novaya Zemlya. Temperatures from -3 to 8 degrees. In Karelia, the northwestern areas, the Baltic areas, and Belarus, after the cold front, Arctic air will seep in. There will be fewer clouds. Precipitation will gradually cease, and it will be much colder. In Karelia, in the northwestern area, -2 to 7. In the Baltic countries and Belarus, around 0. In the Volgovatsk area, in the zone of atmospheric fronts, heavy snowfall will occur with blizzards during the day, -1 to 6. In the central region, it's cloudy with some periods of snow. By evening, temperatures will drop to -2 to 7. In Ukraine and Moldova, precipitation will cease and cloudiness will gradually subside during the day up to +5. Atmospheric fronts will bring to the central Chernozem areas and the Volga area inclement weather with snow, wet snow. Temperature during the night and day around 0. The weather will deteriorate in the Rostov area and on the Black Sea coast. Here, rains will pass through with wet snow. On the lower Don, around 0. In around Sochi, +3 to 8 degrees. In the Krasnodar, Stavropol areas in the republics of the Northern Caucasus, it will remain cloudy. In morning and evening hours, there will be fog and some drizzle. During the day, +2 to 5. In the Chechen Republic and Ingushetia, in Dagestan at night, 0, -5. During the day, around 0. Beyond the Caucasus, the day will be variably cloudy without significant precipitation. In Georgia and Azerbaijan, +4 to 7. In the valleys of Armenia, +2 to 5. In St. Petersburg, cloudy skies with periods of snow at night around 0. During the day, temperatures will fall to between -4 to 6. In Moscow, cloudy with wet snow at night around 0. By the end of the day, temperatures will fall to between -3 to 5 with ice on the roads. Information was compiled according to the data of the Oceanic Meteorological Center of Russia, and I wish you all the best.